that. Yeah. There are many things in the Irish economy that are chaotic, including the health service. I mean, why would anybody want to believe a politician or a Taoiseach whose main 48-sheet posters at the start of the last general election were, "I will end the scandal of hospital trolleys"?
Well, I think if you go back to...
Is it acceptable for us to understand? Is it acceptable for us to believe that you break promises?
If you go back to the to any of the previous 48 sheets as well, I recall the leader of Fianna Fáil...
I'm not asking about that. I'm asking about I will end the scandal of hospital trolleys.
I'm telling you about it if you let me tell you.
No, you're bringing up Fianna Fáil. I'm talking about you.
I admit, I'm the first to admit, that the health situation is not the way that we would like it to be. But we've made a very strong start here. I don't want to see anybody having to be on a trolleys, and it's unfortunate that they are. But you cannot invest to this scale unless you have an economy that functions.
Well, listen. You had 5 years to do it. You would end the scandal of hospital trolleys.
When this government was elected to office, our country was bankrupt. You were dealing with your radio programs. You got them.
I'm dealing with the same things now as it was 5 years ago.
Well, you're not dealing with the same things.
I'm dealing with hospital waiting lists. I'm dealing with 2 years waiting for an autism assessment. I'm dealing with old age pensioners. The paltry €3 that they got in the budget, it wouldn't buy them a chicken. I'm dealing with 0 hours contracts. I'm dealing with multinationals giving people 18-month contracts and then letting them go. I'm dealing with immigration. You claim that 250,000 people went away and they're coming back. Where do you get the information that people are coming back?
I'm not sure where you're coming from here.
But I'm saying that we're dealing with the same things now as we were 5 years ago.
Well, you're not actually. You're dealing with a situation now where the deficit of the country is gone from 18 billion down to just over 4, where unemployment has fallen from 15.2 to 8.6.
Yeah, but that's massage. You're using JobBridge and you're using outreach programs.
Well, if you're telling me on Red FM that the creation of 135,000 jobs is massage, then I disagree with you.
A lot of those jobs are third-level education. Not everybody has a third-level education. There are 64 electoral districts in Cork that are labelled as disadvantaged or seriously disadvantaged. Yeah. 25% of the families in Cork are deemed as being single-parent families.
Unemployment across this region.
There are areas of Cork, black spots, and seriously disadvantaged where you have something in the region of 25% unemployment.
But that's exactly the reason that we have to keep the recovery going.
No, but they want real jobs. There's no construction jobs. You're not hiring in the public sector anymore where people would normally get some work.
Technology, software, data analytics, these are brand new facilities.
Short-term contracts, many of those.
No, they're not short-term
They're not real jobs. They're not jobs that people can rear a family with. You can't or even maybe get a mortgage.
Apple employ a further 1,000
18-month contracts.
Apple employ a further...
Low tax rate.
Well, if that's the attitude that you wish to take, Neil, then that's fine.
Well, what attitude do you want me to take? Do you want me to roll out a red carpet and say that everything's cool?
I don't want you to roll out any red carpet. I'm telling you here, you've looked at the collapse of the construction sector, and that's where you're going
Nobody's building houses. Public authorities aren't building houses. None have been built in Cork.
Government have changed the
Private sector aren't building houses.
Levies have been reduced for contractors. Building regulations have been changed. 4 billion is on the table and directions given to every local authority in the country to get on and start building social housing. This is the last of the sectors to respond because it collapsed completely. Maybe you don't recognise that.
I do recognise it because I deal with it every day. I deal with people who are homeless. I deal with people
actually.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. I deal with people who are living in their cars. They're living in travel lodges. I deal with the guy who's living down in the marina, actually, out of a box. These are the people that I deal with regularly. I deal with people who you wouldn't give a break to on their mortgage, but yet you allowed the banks to write down debt for developers. But nobody gave people who were scalped when they paid top dollar for their houses a break. You never instructed the banks to reduce their repayments and to give them a bit of leeway. Why didn't you do that for the common man if you did it for developers?
Well, as you know, after the collapse of the economy and the country with the previous Fianna Fáil administration, the government introduced a whole suite of options for those who have mortgages and those who lend them, whether they be banks or other financial institutions.
No, but I asked you about debt write-off specifically.
Yes, and debt write-off is a feature of life now with insolvency there.
No, I'm talking about family.
Bankruptcy for families in situations like this being reduced to 1 year, 3 years and 1 year if
But we don't want families to go bankrupt. We want them to get a break on a property that's not worth what they're paying for it.
You don't want to know the truth here. Plenty options for those who have mortgages that are in distress to sit down with the lenders and negotiate through a code of conduct presented by the central bank for every bank to be courteous and work with the people to whom they have lent money.
But they're not.
But the numbers are dropping seriously in terms of those who are now in mortgage
But
distress.
the most vulnerable, who are the electorate, got ignored, and the
the
banks screwed them, and the courts endorsed it.
Some banks, as you know, have written write-offs in particular circumstances.
Let me ask you about water charges, because Fianna Fáil will abolish them. They're absolutely toxic. Why haven't you decided once and for all, and perhaps win this election single-handedly by just abolishing this nasty tax?
I don't accept from you at all that water charges are toxic.
They are on the doorstep. Surely be to God you're getting it on the doorstep.
It's very necessary that people have a proper and decent water supply.
But the allegation, of course, by the opposition, everybody else, is we're paying for it anyway in our taxes.
Well, if you tell me that a contribution of €1.15 or €3 a week is excessive,
but it's the sum of all the parts, though. You know, it could go to 400, 500. It could go even higher. It's the things to come.
Water prices are fixed until 2019. Good quality water is not only important for people in their daily life,
I accept that, but they're paying high enough tax as it is. They're paying universal social charge, they're paying property tax, they're paying PRSI, they're paying water charges, they have to pay for their own refuse collection. What in the name of God do we pay tax for at all if every service we need needs to be paid independently?
The government didn't increase income tax, and we're going to abolish USC altogether. We've already reversed the cut in the minimum wage brought in by Fianna Fáil. We've raised the minimum wage twice. We set up the low
But minimum wage isn't a good wage. Everybody goes on about minimum wage.
We've set up a low-paid commission to have a structured system for lower-paid workers to get increases, and the government will adhere to that.
One of the big initiatives that you put in was the free GP for under sixes. Could I use the word chaos with regards to that, for instance?
No, you can't.
Well, why? Because it could be 2 or 3 weeks before a child gets seen by a doctor.
That's not true under the GP and free GP access service.
Yeah, but they can't get in.
People are now getting used to having free access to their GP.
But they can't get to see a doctor.
But of course they can get to see a doctor. It's working very well, and people are now getting used to it.
They can't. They're telling me that they can't on the air.
We have it all over the country. The GPs have agreed to this. They're doing very well. 250,000.
The GPs are saying they're swamped. I don't know, are we living on two parallel planets
no, we're
or
not living
what?
on two parallel planets, and we're in Ireland. It's a small country, and we know each other very well, and we know what's happening.
Cork has a Sinn Féin controlled council. Cork has a Sinn Féin Lord Mayor. Are you dismissing over 20 or 25% of the Cork electorate by telling them to ignore Sinn Féin?
What I'm saying to people is that you've had a stable government for the last...
I'm talking about here in Cork now.
That's a matter for the people when they made their decision here in Cork in the local elections.
Yeah, but what I can't understand is what's your problem? What's your problem with Sinn Féin? If they could garner 25% of the vote in Cork?
My problem with Sinn Féin and Fianna Fáil is this. One party wrecked the economy, the other would wreck it. We had a flight of investment and jobs out of this country like you've never seen before.
Okay, if you forget about Sinn Féin, then would it not be?
I'm not forgetting about Sinn Féin.
No, but you are. You're telling people forget about them, dismiss them. You're looking at Fianna Fáil. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are the same type of party. You're only divided by a civil war.
Excuse me.
Isn't that the natural bed partner for government?
Excuse me, please. Excuse me, please.